the policies that were put in place, the president signed, that was led by the House, are still having an economy that's going gangbusters, and all of that is good for our people. But what we're hearing from Nancy Pelosi and people that really want to run their conference right now, like Ocasio-Cortez and Omar and Tlaib and others like that from Michigan, doesn't bode well if they were able to get their policy through. But thank God we have a Senate at least time that is well practiced at holding things up, and I hope this term they'll hold a lot up that could come from the House.
Well, Tim, for one, they just drove Schultz into the walkaway movement. The cast of characters you just mentioned, but you see Nancy off camera, right?
I do.
Do they walk her to and from the podium?
No, they don't.
Oh, I was just wondering because I was watching some clips of her, and it just looked like she was kind of incoherent.
Yeah. Here's my first question, Tim. She asked, or her and Schumer asked, open the government and we'll negotiate on the wall. And to this point now, it's been a week. We got 2 more left. Has there been any movement for them to say, we'll talk about a barrier of some sort? Any funding at all?
You hit the crucial point that we ought to be talking about more in the media, and especially the national media, talking about the fact that she decried that President Trump was pushing forward things. He had shut the government down, and as you know, the president said he would take the blame for that shutdown. I don't think he should have, because no bill ever came from the House or Senate that made it to his desk for him to veto and shut things down. So it was still a Pelosi-Schumer shutdown. But nonetheless, he gave them a chance, and I think in a very adult way said, okay, I'm giving you nothing except 3 weeks. I'm not giving you DACA. I'm not giving you more border agents. I'm not giving you more electronics. I'm not even giving a wall. I'm just saying you have 3 weeks as a Congress to do the job that you constitutionally are authorized and directed to do, and to get together and come up with a solution, bring it before me, and we'll see if it works.
Is it a coincidence? I'm sorry.
Well, what we've seen so far is exactly what you intimated at, that this was given to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and Nancy Pelosi has been the one out front saying, we're still not giving $1 to a wall. And if you have a negotiating team that's been set aside by both the House and Senate leadership, Republicans and Democrats, coming from the Appropriations Committee of both houses, they have been given a responsibility within the 3 weeks to come up with a solution that the House and Senate can vote on and send to the President. And as of this week, the mantra still coming from Nancy Pelosi is saying, we will not negotiate on a wall. Well, how can you have a conference committee made up of good people on both sides, intent on coming to a solution? And I know I say that because I hear these people talking behind closed doors. They don't want another shutdown. They don't want this border insecurity still in place. They believe that there are barriers that will help, and they're not totally opposed to barriers of any kind. And yet Nancy Pelosi is saying no. So I think what's going to happen is that the members of this select committee, this conference committee, are going to have to decide amongst themselves, we're going to put a plan together that we believe that both House and Senate can pass, and the President arguably could sign. It would give him basically what he wants in border security with barriers, walls, where they fit, and then all of the rest of the stuff that he's offered and that the Democrats have said they want as well, and that's electronic surveillance equipment enhanced, more border patrol agents, more lodging for asylum seekers, more electronic stuff at the borders, at the gateway points, all of that, including, because the President has already said, I'll even give you 3 years of DACA to move forward on that. And that would go into the next president's time, whether it's him or somebody else. So if you don't like it, you have 3 years to negotiate towards something better. And I think that's what the pattern ought to be of this select conference committee, to do exactly what was offered there, so in such a way that the President does have conceivable opportunity to say, okay, it's not exactly everything I want, but it's certainly better than what we were talking about. It does give me border barriers. It gives me walls in appropriate places where they'll work, and let's get on with it. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping that because it's not Nancy sitting in the room, that maybe some of these people will rebel to a point and say, no, we've been given the responsibility, we're going to bring back a deal.
Are we going to get rid of landfall asylum? Because if we have a wall and the wall is within 10 feet of the border and they cross the border and now they're standing at the wall and a drone catches them at the wall, now the Democrats have got exactly what they want. This person has a witness that they made it onto American soil and they can cry asylum to that drone.
Yeah, well, that is, again, the reason why we saw the president say we want to move forward something that a lot of us have been talking about for some time, and that's you apply for asylum back in your home country at an American establishment there, an embassy or some type of facility where they can go and they can put in their papers for asylum, and we can adjudicate them right where they're at. They don't have to make that long journey.
Well, we couldn't do that in Cuba. You know, that's a whole different case. We couldn't do that in Cuba. So we gave them landfall from Cuba because they had to make that 90-mile swim, you know? But Mexico's a whole different story.
If you have a wall, they've got to get to the other side of that wall.
Right.
And that's what President Trump understands, that the wall only gives us the opportunity to stop illegal incursions into our country. It doesn't stop people still coming and wanting to get asylum, but they're going to have to go through a legal boundary, or it's going to be an awful lot harder for them to get around or over or under a wall. And that's where our drone equipment comes in handy, of seeing people who are trying to circumvent the wall and be able to catch them and not worry about those hundreds of miles that the wall or the barrier, the fence will protect. And that's the rationality of all of this. That's why it works in Israel. That's why it works any place where there is a wall that says this is the border. You can stay on the opposite side of it, but once you try to cross, not going through the legal route, you are an illegal.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Tim. You've got the Border Patrol Union and the Border Patrol polls all showing that 97% of our men and women who work the border are asking for a barrier, be it a wall, the slatted fence, the concrete, the razor wire, whatever. They're asking for it. Do we have Border Patrol agents themselves showing up in front of this committee and testifying? Because I think it doesn't get any simpler than that. Here's a guy or gal that works that border every day saying, listen, I've got 100 people trying to cross. There's only me and a partner, 2 of us. You can't stop and control 100 people if there's no barrier to slow them down.
Right. And we've had those personnel in front of committees. Now, whether or not the new committees that have just been established by the Democrats will have these same people across, I don't know.
Expert testimony.
But these people have been across, and when I hear Democrats say, hey, we have to have evidence, we have to have solid factual evidence that this will be workable. Well, we have that already. We have the people that are working the wall, and they're saying we need this. We don't need it every single inch of the border, and we're not asking for that, neither is the president. But we're saying where it will work and where it is the best form of protection against illegal incursion into our country. That's what we want. Yeah, we want more Border Patrol agents. Of course they do. They want more and upgraded electronic surveillance, and the president has offered that. Things that will catch, like last week, even more efficiently, a record shipment of fentanyl coming across that had the potential of killing thousands of our citizens if it got across up here into Ann Arbor or Monroe or Jackson, and that's where it's coming. And when people say that stuff isn't coming around the wall, it's coming through the gateways. No, it's not. Not all of it. That's only the stuff we catch, like what we caught last week.
Yeah.
The other stuff that can be coming in other directions around any type of barrier is what we're not catching until we stand in front of a casket like I did a few weeks back of a young man that didn't make it.
Yeah.
And, that's the stuff that American people have to think common sense and say, if we caught everything at the border, we wouldn't have everything getting through.
Yeah.
So where's the stuff coming from? And when Kevin McCarthy read last week in his speech before a vote the names of 50 individuals in California alone, law enforcement agents and others, that had lost their lives to illegal criminal aliens, with the names of these people. That ought to get our attention, that this isn't a ruse. This is a border insecurity problem, and this president is the first president attempting to do something in a strong way and not backing down.
Yeah. Tim, what happens to El Chapo's frozen assets?
I don't know.
Because
I don't know.
You've heard, people say, let the Mexican build the wall. Let him
Ted
pay
Cruz
for it.
put some. Yeah. He started something. I don't know if it made it anywhere, but he was talking about passing or proposing a bill that would use El Chapo's assets to build the wall.
And then the Mexican would pay for it.
But it wouldn't make it through the House anyways.
Well, it might not, but that would be a tough one. That'd be a tough one for them to, if that was doable and we could get the hands on it and can control it. There is no specific law that we have in place that would we would violate if we did that. If that was the case, then yeah,
Well, I'm thinking in terms of...
We know that El Chapo has millions of dollars of assets, and then if you think of the other cartel officials, let's catch as many others as we can, and we'll have millions, but I don't know. I can't answer that.
Okay, we have so many civil forfeiture laws where a local police department, confiscates $1,000 in a kid's trunk, says that was a drug deal, and they keep it, or they keep the car. And then they use the car. They don't have to go to court to use these assets. I would think that this would not have to go through Congress. This is just seized forfeited funds that our federal law enforcement, the DOJ, could use to build a wall. Give it to the Military Corps of Engineers and be done with it.
Yeah, and if that's a capability, that'd be one thing. If not, where I stand on civil asset forfeiture, and I have my bill in.
Oh, I don't like it either, but this wouldn't hurt my feelings this way.
Yeah. No, not at all.
So Tim, let's change gears real quick, because I heard Dick on his program here. He wanted to know if you had an update on the background check bill.
Well, it's been introduced, and it will certainly have a hearing, and it will probably have a vote, and it could pass the House, though I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, because there'll be Democrats that talk about it. But when push comes to shove, and they know the constituents back there, Democrats and Republicans. I was at a Muskrat dinner last night, about 300 men in the room there, and I would guess that the majority of those, whether they were Democrat or Republican, would still stand very strong on our Second Amendment and any incursion into that, and also understand common sense that what they're talking about in these universal background checks will not stop any of the illegal use of guns and the heinous mass shootings that we've had in recent years. It just won't do it. They know that you go to a gun show and a gun dealer there selling a gun has to perform a background check like anyone else anyone in your local stores or at Cabela's. All of this is a ruse again to go after our Second Amendment liberties, and I think when push comes to shove, even in the House, it will not be an easy lift, if even possible, to get that bill voted successfully out of the House and sent to the Senate. We do know that in the Senate, we still have the ability to stop that from even having a hearing using a cloture requirement.
Okay. Well, we've got the State of the Union coming up Tuesday night. Mm-hmm. You'll be back in D.C., I assume.
I will be.
Have you heard anything? Do you expect that to be a barn burner, or has everything been kind of really tight on what the president's going to say on State of the Union?
Well, yeah, it's been pretty tight so far. It won't be probably till Tuesday morning that I start getting some information on it in my office. But I expect it to be a barn burner in the sense that it's going to be highly watched, because people on both sides want to hear this president, who was denied the opportunity to give it when it was originally planned by the Speaker, until the shutdown was finished. The shutdown is finished, and now the opportunity is there. What's he going to say? What's he going to say about this border security issue? And you know that's going to be a big deal that he's going to talk about. What's he going to say about what's going on in Syria? What's he going to say about the most recent backing away from the INF with Russia, a country that's not been living by it for quite some time, since at least 2006 or 7? And no one's done anything about it until this president. And so there's going to be a lot of interest in seeing what he's going to say, and will he